How hard is it to catch 5 tournament caliber bass with no help, no practice on a public body of water? Let's find out. Today we're on Kerr Lake in Oklahoma. This is a shallow, muddy lake off the Arkansas River. Usually there's a lot of current flow through the dam on both ends of the lake. However, there's no current flow today. My initial game plan was to fish shallow water willow grass and wood that was on the bank. Unfortunately, the lake was about a half a foot low, and this left most of the good grass and wood with too little water for the fish to actually set up in. With the lack of current and the low water, it was really tough to actually get bit up shallow. I spent about 2 hours switching between the shallow grass and laydowns with no success. I then switched over to fishing a deeper rocky road that had some riprap and an old culvert. I lost a really good fish on a shallow diving crankbait that I would estimate to be between 3 and 4 pounds.
Oh golly, he came off. That was a big one.
I tried replicating this area in a few other creeks, but didn't have any success. I was now 4 hours into my day and didn't have a single fish in the boat. Because the shallow bite was so tough, I decided that I needed to abandon those shallow fish and go back to my strength, which is fishing offshore. We're here in the middle to the end of August, and whenever I'm fishing in August on a river system where you have less than 2 foot of water visibility, my go-to offshore areas are shell beds. Shell beds are areas where groups of mussel shells get washed up by the current onto shallow, flat areas, like points or shallow flats. Most of these shell beds are going to be positioned in 1 to 4 foot of water. They're usually pretty tricky to find unless you know exactly what you're looking for on a fish finder. Let me show you how to actually identify these shell beds using side imaging, and also a few tricks to tell if the fish are actually using those shell beds when they're that shallow. Here's a great image of a shell bed on side imaging. Shell beds are made of mussel shells, which are pretty hard and give a strong return on the fish finder. Therefore, when shells wash up on a shallow flat that is made of silt or mud or sand, usually those shells are going to have a stronger return, creating a brighter spot on the screen. This makes it relatively easy to find shell beds if your lake is very silty or muddy. However, shell beds are not always going to wash up onto soft bottom areas with mud or sand. Sometimes the shells will actually wash up onto rocky bottoms. This makes them a lot more difficult to identify with a fish finder. When I'm dealing with shallow areas that have rock or harder bottom, I'll use a contour map instead of my electronics to try to predict where these shell beds have set up. The key thing to look for on a contour line map when you're trying to find shell beds on these river system lakes is to find a very shallow water area, let's say a 3 foot flat, that's next to deeper water, which is usually created by a creek channel. The shell beds will be located on top of the flat in 1 to 4 foot of water next to this deeper drop off. The reason these shells accumulate on these shallow water areas is because the current is going to be flowing through this lake. Whenever the creek channel swings up hard against a shallow water area and then makes a turn, shells that have been caught up by the current will be deposited on that shallow water area, and after enough of them accumulate, they'll create a shell bed. Using a combination of my side imaging on soft bottom areas and my contour line map in harder bottom areas, I was able to find 6 shell beds very quickly. The way that I know that there's shell down there for sure is that I will throw a lipless crankbait or some other type of treble hook bait and actually snag the bottom on purpose to pull up shells. You can actually see an image here of some shells that were caught up on my shallow diving crankbait. Now, like all offshore areas, not every single shell bed is going to have fish on it at all times. The other ingredient you need to have a good shell bed is the presence of bait fish. Of the 6 shell beds that I found, only one of them had bait fish that I saw on my fish finder suspended out in the middle of the creek channel. Because I saw the bait fish here, and I knew the shell bed was in shallower water, I had a good feeling that there were going to be some bass positioned somewhere around that shell bed. Therefore, I pulled up on the spot and started making a few casts.
Got him. Good one. Finally. Stay on there, fish. On the shaky head. Not exactly how I wanted to be catching them today on old Kerr, but take what I can get. There we go, fish number one right there. Nice one. Finally on an old shell bed here. Took me getting a little bit sneaky on him to put number one in the boat, but now that I've kind of figured it out, I've lost the fish, now this is number one, I might get a limit here pretty quick. There we go, fish number one is not a big one, 1 pound, 10 ounces, but is number one. It's been a grind today. Let me explain how I got onto this fish and how I've been struggling all day, and then try to get back out there and get another one. Got him. Good one. They're up there. I lost one on the last cast, connected with this one. Here we go, solid one. Man, these shell beds are absolutely deadly this time of year. They're hard to find. This is like the 8th one I fished today, but when you can finally find them, man, it can be every single cast. That is awesome. Got to get a weight on this guy really fast because they're biting every cast. I gotta keep that bait getting in there. But that's, guys, I haven't caught anything all day. And all of a sudden, 2 pounds, 1 ounce right there. Man, it's happening. Lock that guy in. They didn't lock the last one in, that 1 pound, 10 ounce there. Get back down there. I'm too freaked out, guys. I have literally been struggling so hard today, and it's just hard finding those individual fish in August up shallow. Maybe I'm just not that great at shallow water fishing either, but I had to get to offshore, and now it's looking pretty easy every single cast. And they are up there shallow, guys. This is like 2 foot of water up on top where these fish are setting up. And I mean, I can barely get my bait in there without them eating it. So hopefully we can get a limit off the spot because I know they're up there. Got him. Oh, there we go. It's chunky though, 1 pound, 8 ounces. Kind of flopping all over the place, but 1 pound, 8 ounce there. 1.5 pounds, solid little fish. Getting back down there, that guy was a line burner, so hopefully there's some bigger fish out here, but it's every single cast, guys. One thing I've noticed with this worm though, I made a couple casts without getting bit and I was overworking the worm. It seems like right now on this spot, they want me to just literally dead stick that thing up there. All I'm throwing is a black Zoom trick worm with a Perfection Lures stand-up shaky head. Since there's some shell up there and some rock, I thought maybe that stand-up head would help a little bit. It's just a 3/16 ounce head. And I'm throwing out a 7'4" medium action rod so I can make a long cast and set the hook on those fish out there away from the boat. Again, they're not deep. They're in like 3 foot of water, 4 foot of water. But for whatever reason, when I'm just sitting there dead sticking it, that's how they want it. So I'm just kind of moving it really slow, dead sticking it, and then picking up every 10 or so seconds, and it seems like one will just be on there.
Really quick, if you guys need help finding spots either shallow or offshore on your home lake, head to our website, fishthemoment.com. Then go to our lake breakdowns page. Here you'll find lake breakdowns from professional angler Randy Blockett on shallow water areas and myself on offshore areas. We break up our lake breakdowns by season and give you 40 GPS waypoints that you can download straight to your fish finder. We have a lot of summer breakdowns. You can also scroll down to find some fall breakdowns that are going to work really well from September through November on a variety of lakes around the country. If you want some additional help finding some spots on your home lake, check out our lake breakdowns on fishthemoment.com.
Got him. Good one. Man, I had to make a lot of casts on that spot to get that fish to bite. I made like 25 casts after catching my last fish. That's a lot better fish right there. Once you find them offshore on these spots, you can catch a lot of them, and there will be good ones mixed in. There we go, solid fish right there. Choke that worm. I'm just having to absolutely slow play them. I'm getting bit every once in a while, and they're out there. I'm just kind of having to really soak it to get those better ones. They're not chasing crankbaits. They're not chasing any sort of moving bait. You basically just have to dead stick a worm up there. There's not really that much current going on. I think it's just more of the afternoon timing deal on these shell beds. A lot of times in the summertime like this, in the afternoons, those fish will get a little more aggressive and move up shallower at, like, let's say 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think it's just more of a timing deal right now. If the current was flowing though, we would be absolutely hammering them. There we go. 2 pounds, 10 ounces. Solid fish right there. Nice one. Getting back down there. Number 4. Didn't lock in my first fish, which was a 1 pound, 10 ouncer, but current weight is 6 pounds, 3 ounces on this scale. So that means we have 7 pounds, 13 ounces. So still got a long ways to go. Got to retie here, but if we can pull out a couple more 2.5 pounders off this spot, there's a chance that maybe a little 5 pounder might show up here. There could be a big one. So we're just gonna keep after it and see if old Big shows up. And one thing that's really important to call out right here, guys, is that I am casting to one very specific spot up here. There's actually a rocky ridge that sticks out from this point here, and you can actually see it here on my 360 imaging, and I'll show you on side imaging as well. The thing about this spot though is that there's not just a rocky ridge, there's actually a shell bed up on top of those rocks. And it's super common on river system lakes that have a lot of current to have shell beds mixed in with some chunkier, bigger rock. And those fish, they're not sitting in the rock, they're just sitting in that shell. And so I'll cast up there. Sometimes I'll miss right or left by 5 or 6 feet because the shell bed's only maybe the size of the front deck of my boat here. But every time I land in that shell bed and make the perfect cast and just dead stick that bait there, I get bit. Got him. Stay on there, fish. Be number 5. Oh yeah, good one. Oh, there we go. That was pretty cool right there. Actually saw them with the live scope move up on top of that point, and some shad were up there, and that's when I knew that I could actually fire up there and catch them. These shad are basically just moving in and out of this spot, and I'm just sitting here just waiting for them to move in. It basically is just a waiting game. I wait 15, 20 minutes, and then they move up and I get a bite, and I wait another 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Not exactly the most exciting way to fish. Not like I'm running around or anything, but hey, got 5 in the boat here. That is all we can ask for. So let's get a weight on this guy really quick. 2 pounds, 6 ounces, number 5. I am happy to have him, and I'm happy to have 5 in the boat after as tough of a day as we had this morning. I didn't even think I was gonna catch a fish up shallow, and I lost one good one, 2.5 maybe to 4 pounder. I couldn't tell exactly how big, but now we're kind of getting after it, getting some nice fish in the boat. Put this guy back down there, and we're kind of salvaging the day by moving away from the bank. And I think that's the deal, guys, with these Catch 15 challenges going forward. I need to be focused on finding schools of fish, because I don't just need to catch 1 or 2 random good fish. I need to put 5 fish in the boat. And really, with my skills offshore, I should be able to hopefully put 1 decent fish in the boat every day. And if I can find 1 aggressive school like this, I can put a limit in the boat. So I think that going forward, I might just need to abandon the shallow game and start going for the offshore game, because it seems to be working out a little bit better, even on these shallow, muddy lakes, which is crazy. Well, there we go, guys. Got number 5 in the boat. It's actually getting a little bit nasty behind us with some lightning and thunderstorms. Probably great weather to catch fish, but not great weather for camera gear. So we're gonna actually call it a day a little bit short. I only fished offshore on these shell beds for about 2.5 hours. In that time, I found 6 different individual shell beds, and then refished a couple different times that look really promising. But for today, we only managed to catch 5 fish for 10 pounds, 3 ounces. Fortunately, we did all of our damage in about an hour, so that's pretty good, and we did manage to get 5 fish in the boat. I don't expect to get 15 pounds every single day I go to the lake, but one thing that definitely helped today was finding some schools of fish on these offshore shell beds. Once I found that school of fish, I was easily able to put a limit in the boat by kind of downsizing to a little black zoom trick worm on a Perfection Lure stand-up shaky head in the 3/16 ounce size. You can see that little shaky head has these little wire guards that keep it standing up when it's just dead stick there on the bottom, which is a really cool feature. I'll link some of these jig heads and the worms down in the description below. If you use that link, I'll get a small percentage of the profits on Tackle Warehouse. So if you could use that link, I'd really appreciate it. And basically, I just milked this spot for all it was worth. the fish were moving up onto the shell bed in the afternoon every, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes and feeding. Now, I was finding that there were fish around these shell beds earlier in the day, around maybe 1 o'clock, but for whatever reason, those fish just weren't that aggressive, even around like noon. They were up there, but they weren't actually, going up and feeding on the shell beds. It wasn't until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock when we pulled up on this shell bed that I was able to get those fish to bite. What I think is happening is that there's no current right now, and in the late summertime, whenever you get brighter skies, you'll get these algae blooms that happen in the afternoon, and those algae blooms will pull the bait fish out of deep water to feed on the surface algae around those shell beds. And I think that was what was happening here. And those bait fish moved up, those bass were just gorging on them, and I managed to put a limit in the boat. One thing this does tell me though, guys, is that I don't think in these Catch 15 challenges, I need to be messing with the shallow water fishing at all, especially in times that aren't like the springtime when the bass are all over the beds. When the bass are, let's say, 50-50 shallow or offshore, I need to be fishing offshore, or at least need to be targeting schools of fish, places where I can catch 5, 6, 7 fish off of one spot. Sometimes you can find those spots up shallower or closer to the bank. And I mean, this spot isn't that far offshore, it's pretty close to the bank as well. But I need to be basically looking for schools of fish in these challenges. If I'm not targeting schools of fish, it's gonna be really tough to consistently catch 15 pounds and consistently catch a limit. So I'm gonna keep experimenting with that in future videos. Make sure to subscribe to the Fish Moment YouTube channel if you wanna see more Catch 15 challenges. And if you wanna see my breakdown of how I actually prepared for this trip, from all the equipment I was using to all of the spots that I picked out on Google Earth, check out the last couple videos on the channel. It has all of my prep videos for this fishing day. Thanks again for checking out this one, and we'll see you on the next one.